going to give you a highlight from VAW-116. So the CO is Guillermo, who you're going to watch in a second. So VAW units, those are, in my deep understanding of the Navy, you have an aircraft carrier, and there are 7 types of planes that are associated with that aircraft carrier. Of course, there are the fighters that do the fighting, but then there are all these other planes that are circling it that do all kind of the electronics and communication and making sure they understand the whole war space. And VAW or Hawkeyes sit at the top of that, and they're taking information from all other planes and subs, synthesizing it and sending it back to the carrier group to so that everyone's protected and they understand what's happening in the region. The VAW-116 is based in Point Mugu, California. They're about to deploy out soonish, and they're a high-performing unit. So they won this, and the Navy has this thing called Battle E Award. So they're the best, VAW unit in the whole U.S. military and anywhere. So a high-performing unit. There are 162 Sun Kings. Probably an interesting thing. Before I'm just going to play that kind of video snippet from the kind of update that the CO gave when he was here. But he came about to Academy, was it a year ago? About November. And he's a gung-ho guy. He just went back and started doing it. Though when he was here at Academy, he was here for a day, and then there were those wildfires in California. And so the fires were approaching the Naval Air Station. So he had to leave after a day. He went back and, they had to make sure the planes don't burn. And so he only got a day of Academy. And then he just started doing it. And even before that was before we published our kind of best practices document, what to expect. We didn't have that at that point. And he just basically started doing it. So he made a bunch of mistakes when he did it that ultimately they corrected. But he really went through this journey of being a kind of a gung-ho believer in feedback. They had some real setbacks. He's like, I don't believe it. And then he ended up back in believing again. So we'll send you the full length. It's like probably half an hour kind of talk, and then another 30 minutes of Q&A, which we can share later. But with that said, I was going to just play a snippet from what he told us last month.
I kind of thought about all the things we have in a squadron normally in a command to provide feedback to me and to the leadership team in the squadron. And I went all the way from our most basic to some of our more formal, starting with the human interactions. And that's a great feedback tool when sailors want to talk to you. A lot of eye-to-eye conversations. You're talking to them at every touch point. You're talking to them on the ship. You're talking to them in the passageways. You're talking to them in their workshops. You're talking to them when you're manning up in airplanes and when you're debriefing a flight after flying. That's a traditional, and that's immediate. Your flight debriefs, which is a very effective tool in Navy aviation, where we're very, very critical of each other and talking about what could have gone better. Even when a flight goes really well, sometimes it's our most interesting, or when we're able to pull some very productive nuggets out of those flights that went really well. Lots of times it's very easy when things don't go well to pull things. And that carries over to a maintenance evolution debrief. So not just every time we fly, but every time we do a major maintenance evolution, we're talking about what could have gone better. Those are immediate. I kind of see those as relatively immediate. It happened just after the event. And then we get into some of those that are time late, like a CO suggestion box, the Any Mouse, which is just much like a CO suggestion. It's just an anonymous safety reporting tool. And it's located in a few other places within the squadron, and it's not by the CO suggestion box. Anonymous surveys, those are kind of like required by Big Navy, or like command safety assessment, where they send out a survey of anywhere from 20 to 60 questions and some open-ended questions so our personnel can provide feedback. And that's really for the air crew. And then there's a maintenance MCAS, the maintenance command assessment survey, very similar. And then our managed equal opportunity survey. So these are a lot of the stuff the squadron does. And a lot of times their sailors get overrun by administrative distractions and that kind of survey overload. And I share that because it's an important part of why we wanted to go with the feedback app. And then something as simple as lessons learned logs, like within the shop, within the air crew, within the maintenance department. And then as formal as your evaluation and fit reps. And that's kind of almost too late, because at that point you're telling them all the things they did wrong, and not necessarily, and that's why they're being graded in such a way for promotion, and not necessarily a lead measure, which could have prevented some of that behavior. One of the strengths that I saw when I went out there to Boston and saw this cool feedback app is I looked at it a little differently. In addition to these traditional methods, it was one more opportunity. In our Hawkeye community, we speak about weapon systems and sensors. We are a sensor platform, so it made a lot of sense to us to describe this as one more sensor within our team to help. All right, that's a lot. I only have two or three more slides, and this is my advice, and then I'll open it up for questions. And I think this resonates with Tom and company and Greg and Charlie and Megan, is don't be afraid of the feedback you will get, fight for it. I was more concerned about feedback I wasn't getting. What wasn't I hearing? Because your sailors are talking about it. They're talking about it to each other. They're talking about it in the work centers. They're putting it out on Facebook. They're putting it on their WhatsApp. They're doing all this. They're complaining. Some of it, most of it's valid. There's some truth to it. Some of it is just complaining, and that's okay. They need a place to vent. That's normal. That's healthy. But if you have an opportunity to have a sensor that can create and capture some more of those signals, suck those signals in, and provide you some essay, I would say there's no bad to that. I'd get after that with all the energy you have. I already talked about my opinions on making sure you close the loops with your teams for both effective feedback and ineffective feedback. So when I was getting that stuff with the JOs smoking and joking and acting the fool, we addressed it with them. Like, hey guys, you set a bad example by doing that. Here are some better ways to use it. Then I showed them what our most junior sailors did, and they were kind of embarrassed, and it was very effective. That's kind of like the up check and down check in some ways in a more immediate format. Again, I'm not going to berate this. It's just one more tool. Don't just rely on feedback. And I'm sure the team has shared with everybody. Don't lead by feedback. Don't constantly change your course. Don't constantly shift your rudder based on one piece of feedback. Follow those up checks. Get a sense. Just use it as one more tool. And it sucks sometimes. Like, you get some hard feedback, and it's good to keep a sense of humor and understand what is going on in your unit, and laugh about it when you can. It's been that's been our we laugh a lot sometimes behind the frustration, but it's been good for us. All right, and I'm going to share this slide with you real quick.
So, like I said, that's a longer kind of update. We can share the full link to that. If you go back to the presentation, so that's kind of a snippet from the beginning and the end, basically. Could you go to the next page? Or can I? Probably what he skipped, and we were talking about the end, was that there is, especially when he launched, he did not follow best practices, and they did get a bunch of kind of low calorie, but then it was kind of trolling type feedback. In particular, the junior officers started doing, not helpful feedback. It's almost like you could give someone a 1, and 1 can have a kind of a helpful intent, like you're being constructive, but a 1 can also have a trolling, you're just being an ass intent. And they started getting that behavior, especially with their junior officers. In particular, one junior officer, this is the feedback that she got. You aren't really good at your job. The only reason the front office likes you is because you bypass all the department heads all the time. You need to work on becoming accepted by your fellow JOs instead of trying to task them. No one thinks you have earned a thing. And this, caused a kerfuffle. Like, the cool part of it was that a few things happened. One is that, Guillermo directly addressed it with the team. So that's what he was talking about at the end of that snippet. He addressed it with the whole team, that this is not what it means in their case to be a Hawkeye, to be a member of our community. And he challenged the junior, actually, so that was the JOs. He challenged the enlisted, basically, junior enlisted, to step up and show how it's done, and actually use the tools, use the community tools, start defining what it means to be a member of our team. And that's where this came from. So that was downvoted by 18 people downvoted that. This was early on. It's been more. I don't know what the final number was, but basically people stepped in and said, look, this ain't us. In the same way, the same thing happened yesterday. I appreciated John stepping up. Wasn't in the meeting, but yesterday there's a piece of feedback to a next jumper, Krista in UK, that it's not acceptable here. And our team, there's a boatload of downvotes on that right now, and that's our community saying, at next jump, we don't accept that. That was wrong. And so those tools are important because it allows the team to define itself. Like, what does it mean to be a member of the Navy or the Air Force, or whatever team you are. But it also, this other thing happened on the other side of the page here. You're seeing a couple types of feedback, but the one on the far left, basically it was someone responding to how Guillermo led this situation, that he was very transparent about it. He was very, he kind of said what we wanted to do, why we're doing it, left room for mistakes, addressed those mistakes, didn't sweep it under the rug. And he got, comments like this that just like to say thank you for your bravery in this endeavor. It's a testament to your character as a leader. Kind of, you have hard copies of this, or you will. You can read it. But we've seen this. We've seen this happen in multiple commands. Even Admiral Burke, when he launched it in the N1, so that's the head of HR basically at the Navy. He also got some difficult feedback, and he actually copied, pasted it, put it into a document, and emailed it back to the troops and said, actually, I disagree. I got some negative feedback. I kind of disagree with it, and this is why. But then he also got the bonding with the team was really appreciative. Like, we understand why you're doing it. May disagree, but like, we respect the fact that you're listening to us and you're hearing our voice. And even there's another example here in the middle where they had like basically a work weekend. They were kind of preparing for deployment, and one person was basically complaining that I haven't worked a weekend in 5 years, I don't like it, and other people saying it was cool that the whole group got together. So things that are happening in water cooler talk behind the scenes are being, truth is on the table, so you can talk about it as a team. Go to the next page. The other thing, I'll just end on this story. We went out there and visited them a few weeks ago now. So myself, Greg, Beth and Egg, Daryl and Laura. So Beth and Egg, you'll hear from next. They and we did a what's working, what's not exercise with the most junior enlisted. So they're going to do it with the different levels within the command, but the same thing you guys did, they did. And they went through, it was a little hard. So these are kind of 18, 19, 20, like they're young. They're very young, very relatively inexperienced. And it took a while to get them started, but once they got started, they unloaded all these what's working and unloaded all these what's not working. The cool thing was basically the first thing they said, number one, so they had almost 50-ish kind of what's working. But the very first one they wrote, and the one that was top voted, so they did the green-red voting, was CO transparency. Why in there, like the most junior people that are literally fixing the planes, that are the farthest from the leadership, are the ones saying what makes us Battle E the number one high performing team of our type, and their answer is transparency of the leadership. So it was just very cool to like see that, in that even like the most junior people, who a lot of teams, especially when they're starting feedback, they don't trust the junior people. Like, they can't be trusted. They'll start trolling. They'll kind of worst nightmares come true. In fact, these junior people are the ones that are yearning for it the most.